Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I will talk about Sandifer syndrome. Now, Sandifer syndrome involves spasmodic torsional dystonia along with the arching of the back and rigid opistotonic posturing. It mainly affects the neck, back and upper extremities. It is associated with symptomatic gastroesophageal reflux, esophagitis or the presence of hiatal hernia. Now, what is the etiology of Sandifer syndrome? Dysfunction of the lower esophagus with resultant acidic reflux is thought to be the most common precipitating factor. Although gastroesophageal reflux is common and indeed physiologic in infants, gastroesophageal reflux disease, that is the concerning symptoms or complications associated with the reflux, is much less common. Concerning symptoms may include evidence of pain, which is presumed to be the cause of the posturing. It also includes irritability, poor weight gain, sleep disturbance, and respiratory symptoms. Typically, empiric treatment for gastroesophageal reflux disease alleviate the symptoms of Sandifer syndrome. Hiatal hernia may be associated with Sandifer syndrome, particularly in children older than infancy, and presumably exacerbate the gastroesophageal reflux. Now, the epidemiology of the Sandifer syndrome. Race does not seem to influence the incidence, and no sex predilection is recognized. Typically, Sandifer syndrome is observed from infancy to early childhood. Peak prevalence is in individuals younger than 24 months. Children with mental impairment or spasticity may experience Sandifer syndrome into adolescence. Now, the signs and symptoms. A relationship with feeding suggests the diagnosis of Sandifer syndrome, which commonly occur after feeding. Posturing is typically brief, temporally associated with feeding, paroxysmal, and absent during sleep. The child may have a sudden deviation of the head and neck to one side and legs to the opposite side with a stretch-out appearance. Typically, the back is arched posteriorly with hyperextension of the spine, and the elbows may be flexed and held posteriorly with hyperextended hips. Torticollis may be present. Although the intermittent stiff tonic posture and periods of crying and apparent discomfort may suggest seizures, in many cases the rhythmic clonic component which may be present in seizures is not described in Sandifer syndrome. Now, various stiff, bizarre postures can also be observed, and following features are particularly noted. Typically, the duration of the posture is 1 to 3 minutes. During the posture, the infant becomes very quiet or less commonly become very fussy. Fussiness and evident discomfort are more commonly observed as the posture abates. If a significant volume of gastroesophageal reflux is observed, even without actual vomitus, some infants and children may exhibit evidence of respiratory tract infection as well. This includes cough, wheezing, stridor, depending on the degree and volume of reflux. Now, the physical examination. Sandifer syndrome in infant is most commonly associated with normal physical examination findings. In older children, the syndrome may be associated with mental impairment or anatomic abnormalities of the gastrointestinal tract, such as hiatal hernia. In infants with significant gastroesophageal reflux disease or unsuspected milk protein allergy, the physical examination may reveal evidence of poor nutrition, poor weight gain, and occult blood on fecal guaic testing. Now, the diagnosis. Sandifer syndrome is a clinical diagnosis, and most infants have normal physical examination findings. In laboratory studies, a stool guaic test may be useful. Occult gastrointestinal bleeding may occur with gastroesophageal reflux disease and esophagitis, or with milk protein allergy, both of which may be causative. If there are clinical concern about nutritional or metabolic status, then screening tests such as basic chemistry panel, blood cell count, or urine analysis may be required. Now, the imaging studies. Upper GI imaging, for example, fluoroscopic imaging of the solid barium, may be useful to screen out other anatomic abnormalities, such as hiatal hernia if that is a clinical concern, for example, in an older child. Upper GI imaging is not recommended as a means of diagnosing gastroesophageal reflux or gastroesophageal reflux disease. The study is neither sufficiently sensitive nor specific. Furthermore, the presence or degree of reflux does not correlate with the severity of possible esophageal mucosal inflammation. Gastroesophageal scintigraphy is not recommended in the routine evaluation of the pediatric gastroesophageal reflux. However, cranial MRI may be helpful in defining the nature of neurologic deficit in the children with mental impairment, or in ruling out the concomitant cranial anatomic abnormalities. Now, other tests and procedures. Video electroencephalography monitoring can help differentiate seizures from posturing related to reflux, and this can be combined with a pH probe or multi-channel intraluminal impedance study to demonstrate the nature of the episode and any correlation with the finding of reflux. Now, traditional use of 24-hour pH probe to document the acidity of reflux and its duration is no longer considered a primary modality in defining or characterizing the severity of GERD. Multi-channel intraluminal impedance testing, which measure the passage both anterograde and retrograde of air, fluids and solids in the esophagus, is another modality used to correlate symptoms and reflux. Now, clinical practice guidelines recommend the use of combined multi-channel intraluminal impedance study and pH testing on a single probe to enhance the quality and usefulness of each. Endoscopy with performance of esophageal biopsy is the most sensitive way to diagnose esophageal inflammation due to the reflux, and this may be useful to rule out other conditions that can cause esophageal inflammation and mimic GERD. In general, an invasive procedure requiring sedation such as endoscopy should be limited to patients with unusual presentation and those who are not responsive to more conservative tests and the usual intervention and therapies. Now, there is no histological finding that defines Sandhyfer syndrome. If endoscopy with esophageal biopsy is performed, the result may confirm conditions ranging from mucosal inflammation to erosive esophagitis that can cause Sandhyfer syndrome. Now, the management of Sandhyfer syndrome. This generally does not require treatment and typically resolve within the first 12 to 24 months of life. Initial intervention should be directed at the following lifestyle changes: modification of our attention to the feeding habits, adjustment of the feeds, whether breast milk or formula, exclusionary diets and positioning. Now, typical medication directed at GERD include acid suppressant, that is H2 receptor antagonist, proton pump inhibitors, buffers, that is antacids, and prokinetic agents. These medications are used to treat gastroesophageal reflux disease in older children and adults, but data about their usefulness in infants under age 12 months are very limited. Now, in patients with severe confirmed GERD that is unresponsive to medical therapy and conservative intervention and that interfere with the growth and development, some evidence suggests that niacin fundoplication may alleviate symptoms. Now, the dietary intervention. This typically includes sequential trials of the following: feeding modifications such as smaller volumes, more frequent feeding, and avoiding overfeeding. Use of thickened feeds including rice or oat cereals or other type of thickeners. Use of extensively hydrolyzed protein or amino acid based formula with or without thickening. For breastfed infants, modification of the maternal diet is required. This may include excluding cow's milk and eggs. Now, other lifestyle interventions include avoidance of second-hand tobacco smoke exposure, maintaining the infant in a semi-upright position for 30 minutes after feeding, and avoiding seated or supine positioning during the immediate period after feeding. Now, the prognosis. Morbidity consists of the discomfort associated with Sandhyfer syndrome. Infant may lose weight if persistent or severe gastroesophageal reflux disease is present. Associated morbidities may include the presence of hiatal hernia and esophagitis. Now, Sandhyfer syndrome is not life-threatening. Many patients with this condition eventually outgrow the spasm in later childhood. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more informative videos.